So, welcome to this interview that I'm going to be doing here with Steve Gordon from Unstoppable CEO. Thanks so much for doing this with me, Steve. I really appreciate it.
Hey, Trevor, great to be here.
Yeah. So, this is a topic that it kind of ties into a lot of things that I speak about with regards to the value of creating content. You know, our audience is solopreneur, consultants, coaches. A lot of times they're kind of one man, one woman shows. So they're wearing all the hats in their business. They're operating and sweeping the floors and everything in between. And I know that a lot of times they hear me and other people talk about the value of creating content, but it maybe doesn't sink because they get a little bit intimidated as to like, well, what am I going to talk about? And how am I going to create it? And then how am I going to distribute it? And is it even worth it? And all these different things that come up, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, naturally podcasting is something that's, you know, it's been around for a while, but myself, I'm really just kind of diving back into the topic. Like I had tried to launch a podcast years ago, probably 6 years ago. And it was somewhat of a failed attempt. And there's probably multiple reasons for that, mostly, you know, user experience more than anything rather than the opportunity. But, you know, I wanted to just basically have a conversation with you on this topic and figure out not only the how to, but more importantly, I think the why. You know, like why should a person consider starting a podcast as a means to create content, to add value, to aid the buyer's journey, all that kind of stuff. So why don't we start off by, first of all, just introducing you to everybody. So I got your book. Steve sent me a copy of his book here, Podcast Prospecting, in the mail. I just happened to get it like 2 days ago. So why don't you give everybody a little bit of background as to who you are and what led you to this path?
Sure, Trevor. So that's actually my fourth book. My first book, Unstoppable Referrals, was probably my first foray into major content publication and the beginning of a lot of these ideas. But my business journey started way back in 1994. I was the 10th employee at a tiny little engineering company. And about 4 years later, I got the great honor and opportunity to take over for the founder and be the CEO of that firm. I was 28 years old. I didn't know what the heck I was doing, and didn't know anything about sales and marketing at the time either. Really, you know, like I think a lot of people in expertise businesses, a lot of the people that you talked about in the beginning, you get into doing what you're doing because you love doing it. You want to serve your clients, and then you get thrust out into the world and you realize, I got to go sell something if I'm going to be able to serve anybody, and if I'm going to be able to survive. And so I got to be a very fast student of sales and marketing back then, and had a great time. Had a great team in that firm. We grew that, you know, multiple times over the course of about 10 or 12 years, and just discovered that I really enjoyed the sales and marketing part of running that business a lot more than I enjoyed the engineering part. And so in 2010, I started the current firm where we work with professionals, with experts to help them go and attract clients and put themselves out into the world in a powerful way.
Yeah. And what have you found from the podcasting side of things? Was there a moment 10 years ago where you saw the opportunity and you're like, I got to jump on this, and there was a big spike back then? Or was it kind of like a slow climb over the last 10 years?
No, it's so where podcasting came from in our mix really has nothing to do with podcasting as a medium. Came from really working with a lot of the businesses that you described, those solopreneurs, there's really small firms where the leader is wearing all of the hats and they're trying to create content and do the marketing, but they're also up to their eyeballs serving clients. They got to do the accounting. They got to, you know, do every little thing along the way. And the marketing always came last. And so we were for the first probably 6 years of existence, we were doing consulting and teaching and developing strategies for business owners to go out and apply to their marketing. And clients would come back and go, these are great strategies. This is brilliant. I know it'll be fantastic once I actually implement it. But they'd get stuck at the implementation part of it. And I guess it's the engineer in me. I started kind of, you know, pulling apart what's the block here. And what it really came down to is, you know, a lot of business owners aren't natural writers. It's not the thing they wake up in the morning and want to do, but a lot of the content that we're told to create is written content. Many of them aren't super comfortable or have the capability to do video, as powerful as that is. Up
Yep.
until really recently,
Yeah,
you needed to
for
have
sure.
kind of a setup, right?
Mm-hmm.
So podcasting is this really great middle ground. You don't need all of the technical skill, and you don't have to have somebody doing your hair and makeup. I joke with my clients, hey, I got a face for radio, which is why I do audio
Right. Yeah.
podcasts, right? But
Yeah.
but every one of our clients had the ability to have a conversation about what they were an expert at. And by putting them in front of a microphone, they were able to express that in a way that they couldn't do in writing. They could do it faster, easier. And so that's really where podcasting came in for us, is it was the easiest way to enable a very busy business owner to get their message out. And so that's why we like the medium. It's just very efficient.
Yeah. We were joking around about this on a call that we had a couple weeks ago, but just the idea of like the comfortability of not only being on camera, but even hearing your voice, right? Like we might be, well, we may be dating ourselves a little bit here, but I remember when there was tape recorders, right? And you'd record
Oh, yeah.
yourself and you'd play it back and go, that's not what I sound like at all. And luckily there's a lot of do-over opportunities now with today's technology. You can kind of really, practice things and do all that. But how do you address that with people that, have, say, years, probably decades of experience? They have tons of expertise, because I know a lot of the clients that we work with are like that too, but they're maybe a little bit intimidated at just sharing their message. Maybe they feel too promotional, they feel too spammy, that type of thing. And this kind of ties into the whole concept of like, should they be doing solo type episodes, or should they actually be interviewing people, and kind of the pros and cons and the challenges that people go through with that?
Sure. Well, there's a lot to unpack there. So
Yeah, for sure.
I think the best place to start is kind of the content mix that we advocate, because then that informs everything else. So we kind of have a three-prong approach to how you structure podcast episodes. So the best and easiest place for most people to start is to do an interview with someone that they already know. Best place to start is with your existing clients, the people that are happiest with the work that you're doing, the results you're getting for them. And because you've already got a relationship, it's very easy to kind of knock out the first number of episodes that you do, because you don't have the pressure of talking to a total stranger or trying to do a monologue. It could, because those can be a little bit challenging. So we like to kind of work you up to that. The other great thing about that is you now capture these amazing long form case studies where you're able to talk with that client through the full transformation. So they came in at this place and they were struggling with all these different things, and you're able to pull that out of them and then find out, well, what was it that made them finally want to take action and create change?
Yep.
And then what's life look like now? What's the transformation now? What's the result of it? Well, it's easy to do that in a 20-minute conversation, but if you've ever tried to ask a client for a testimonial, a lot of times it's very hard to get them to sit down and describe that, right?
Yep. So does a lot of it come down to then the positioning of the questioning and stuff? And do you guys help people with that? Because I know, that's something that's kind of a learned skill, right? It's like how to actually be able to be fluid in a conversation, but be able to get out the pieces that you want from an actual interview.
We do. We help clients with a kind of a conversation plan to work through those conversations. And it's once they get into it. So the really interesting thing is people will go into the very first interview nervous, almost universally, right? Because they've never done it before. It's understandable.
Yeah.
I get text messages from clients when they hang up after that first interview that are usually like, oh my gosh, this was the most amazing thing. I had so much fun. The other person loved it. Because when what happens is you both come to the interview in performance mode.
Yeah.
And it's an easy kind of format, because you're having a conversation. You already know how to do that, but you're both sort of showing up with your on-stage persona, and that tends to generate energy. And it's just amazing to see people's reaction to that. So, but clients are a great place to start, and you get the byproduct of these great case studies, but it also is an easy on-ramp to developing the skill. of being able to have these episodes. Most of our clients then will spend most of their podcast episodes doing interviews with other experts. And we kind of coach them to break those into two groups of people. You either want to be interviewing people who have already kind of aggregated your audience. So there are people out there who have already pulled together all of the future clients you want to do business with.
Mm-hmm.
And the goal of interviewing them on your podcast is to build a relationship, a real relationship, not a, manipulative sort of bait and switch relationship, but you want to give them value first. Hey, I'm going to introduce you to everyone I know. We're sort of training the ultimate behavior that we want. We hope they're going to turn around and then allow us to be introduced to everyone they know.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a great first step for that. So you build those relationships, and we've got a process behind that then to turn those into opportunities for you to be in front of their audience. So that's one of the types of interviews you want to have. And the other type of interview, for certain businesses, it makes a lot of sense to go out and try and interview your ideal future client, the prospect that you want to be in touch with, instead of kind of showing up with cold outreach or, trying to storm the castle wall. You kind of parachute in behind the lines and say, look, I'm doing interviews with all of the leaders in the industry. I've already interviewed, John and Bob and Mary and Sue, and your name came up, and I'd love to interview you, Trevor. What do you say?
Yeah.
Well, most business leaders will jump at the opportunity. It's a chance for them to promote what they're doing, to promote their ideas.
Yeah.
And so
go ahead. Go ahead, Steve, finish up.
I was just going to say the bulk of where you want to spend your time is in building relationships like that. Podcasting is less a content creation medium than it is a relationship building medium. The content is this fantastic strategic byproduct from the whole process. So you're going to record these conversations. You got content that can be published as a podcast, reused as a blog post, sliced up and published as, social media, LinkedIn posts, all kinds of things can be done with it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that actually brings me to the technology side of things. Cause as we're talking about this too, I'm just realizing how many years I've actually been doing essentially podcasts, just call it interviews. It's been a long time. And the way that I've done it has evolved over time, right? Like it used to be Skype calls and they were on video. And then there was, I can't remember the name of half of the tools that I've used, but there's been a lot of them. I think about 8 years ago, I was doing these informational interviews, basically like, I was running a platform called Sports Networker. It was a platform to assist people getting jobs in the sports industry. So you had a lot of young professionals coming out of university and that type of thing. So we would approach these senior level executives in the sports industry and just interview them. We had like a set of 5 questions, asking them like, who was a mentor that impacted you along your journey? What is something you would have done differently? What advice would you have to an aspiring sports business professional, that type of thing. And most of it was just being uploaded to YouTube. We didn't put it anywhere else. And I know exactly why, because I know I stumbled with my last attempt at a podcast just strictly based on the technology. And, of course, I know I could have invested in it, but what kind of advice would you give to people that are looking at the tech side of things? Is it worth it as a solopreneur to go and try and figure that out? Or is it better to just hire somebody? And obviously you offer this as a service. So
Sure.
with an unbiased voice, what would you say? Like, what are some of those challenges people run into?
Well, I'll tell you, because I ran into them. Right after I started this firm, I only had one other person on my team at the time, and she was not a technical person. And I started a podcast. This is 2012, kind of before the current trend of podcasts becoming very popular. And I ran that podcast for a year. I interviewed all kinds of experts all over the world. Really was a dramatic upgrade to the quality and breadth of my network at the time. And we published those things, and we had a few listeners and all of that, but I ran out of time. We were getting new business and we were growing, and I just ran out of bandwidth to do it. So that podcast died. And I said I wouldn't start another one until I had a team in place. So I didn't start our current podcast until 2017. Kicking myself now for not having carried through all the way. But, and that was really before we started offering it as a service. And so, taking my own advice and my recommendation to everybody else is get a team, whether you get a team like ours or you build a team internally. You want to have a team to do this. This is probably not the highest and best use, the technical part of it. It's not the highest and best use of your time.
Yeah, for sure.
The relationship part, definitely highest and best use, and probably one of the key roles you have in your business. But the tech part, definitely not. That's that's lower chain of value.
Yeah. And you guys have a process as well in assisting people in just the organizational aspect of it. Like, I say this constantly. I've got a method now called the LinkedIn Linchpin method that basically speaks to the fact that, like, you as the solopreneur in your business are the best marketing and sales tool in your business. You cannot be replaced, but you can be cloned. You can be, you can take a lot of the day-to-day and some of the monotonous work off of your plate. So, what are some of those things that people can do to be able to just get all of the pieces done? Not only like put the list together of the top people that you want to interview, starting with your clients and moving on to, potential prospects, and then lining up the interviews and doing the interviews and taking the tech and having everything exported and then chopping it up and distributing it, like it ends up being a lot. Like, time is always the biggest resistance point that I get from solopreneurs is like, why should I invest my time in this versus some other form of creating content?
Right. Well, and that's because time is so critical, right? I mean, that's the finite resource we have. I'm sure much like you guys do with your LinkedIn process. I mean, we've tried to look at where does that client need to add value? Where are they required to make this entire process work? And we've narrowed that down pretty tightly, even from where we started when we began offering podcast production to our existing clients. And so the way that it works right now, our clients simply just show up and talk. The interview is scheduled often by somebody on our team, occasionally by the client if it's somebody they have a personal relationship with, but most often by someone on our team. And they show up for the interview, they conduct the interview, they build that relationship. And the minute that they hang up with that, or disconnect with the guest, they're done. I mean, they don't even have to save a file and send it to us. The system handles all of that.
That's brilliant. I say that because we work with clients where we set them up with like Google Drive, for example, and they end up paralyzed by Google Drive for weeks and they don't ask for help because they feel embarrassed by it. Right. So it's good that you've covered that one.
Yeah. So, we learned early on that outreach was a major stumbling block because it took a lot of time. So we just said, well, we'll just do that. So we have a process for it. We have clients now that'll say, I was at, they said this before, the pandemic, I was at lunch with, so-and-so, and they take a photo of a business card and text it to us, say, can you book them? I already talked to them about it, and we take it from there. So
that's amazing. Yeah. As far as the like fully leveraging a podcast as well, because it's one thing to like get all the pieces down, get the interviews booked, do the content, post produce it. It's up on all of these different technologies that'll distribute it, that type of thing. What are some of the ways that a person can truly leverage this? Like, I know we were talking before about like, producing a book even as an output from your interview process. And I'm just interested to know other ways to kind of fully leverage it, whether it be chopping it up and distributing it in different ways, using it as some type of a lead into a discussion. What kind of stuff do you advise your clients on doing to fully leverage the content they're creating?
Sure. Well, as I know you understand, producing content is a long-term strategy.
Yeah.
And it really is about leveraging your ideas to sell for you. I mean, if you look at the fundamental goal of this, you want your ideas to go out and pre-sell potential clients before you're ever across the table from them.
Yeah.
And so that's why we're doing it. It's not because we particularly want to have a podcast. It's fun. I like having interviews. I like having these conversations, but from a business perspective, it's really just a vehicle to get the ideas out where they can create leverage for me as the service provider, as the business owner. And particularly in a business where there are very few places where you can create leverage, you need to create it where you can. And this is one of the powerful ways you can do it. So, so we look at the podcast as the basis. It's the easiest way to get your ideas out of your head so that they can go and provide that leverage for you. And then it can be repurposed in a whole host of different ways. So one of the ways that we do that typically early on with clients, usually in the first 3 months that we work with them, is we strategically look at how they work with their clients and how can we organize that, their existing process into a series of solo episodes, or maybe they're episodes where we interview them to pull their expertise out, and then have a copywriter on our team go and turn that into a short book for them so that they can use the book to generate leads. One of the things that people think is, I've got this podcast and it's all magically going to generate leads. Podcasts are not great for lead generation. They are really good at lead conversion. And that's a really important distinction. And so the book, though, however, is a fantastic tool for lead generation. So we just use the podcast to take out of your head the content that's going to, build that book for you so you can generate leads with authority, with expertise. Once now somebody has requested the book and you've got a lead that is at least qualified from a topical basis, now they're in your world, and some of them are going to be ready to do business with you right away. And others are going to take some time. The vast majority are going to take some time. Most businesses don't have a process for the going to close at some point in the future prospect. There's no long-term follow-up. Podcast is an easy way to do that. All you've got to do is show up and talk. You're building these relationships that ideally will get you in front of future clients. And the byproduct of it is this content that is going to be very interesting to the people you want to do business long-term. So you create this kind of flywheel machine where every week you can show up in front of all the leads that you've generated and give them an offer to take a next step. And then the offer is embedded sort of in this Trojan horse content that you're putting out there. And so you've now got that taken care of with minimal investment of time. And one of the things that's powerful about it took me a while to really understand how this worked. We were probably 6 or 8 months into our own podcast. And we started noticing that prospects would get onto sales calls with me and they would tell me, they'd listen to 4 or 6 or 10 or 20 episodes. And I started thinking, like, if you do the math on that, each episode's about a half an hour. I'm spending a ton of time with these prospects before, and I'm not there.
Yeah.
Like the ultimate leverage, right?
No, absolutely.
And they show up feeling like they know me, which is a really powerful way to start that conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. I know I didn't start really producing content consistently until January of this year. And it was, mostly video content, not interview format like what we're talking about here. This is obviously why I wanted to talk to you too, is we've had a few discussions around like, why should I do this? Why should I throw this on my plate as an additional thing? And I'll be honest, like previous to creating content, I wasn't really sold on it. There was an idea that I had of like, if you have a good prospecting strategy in place and you just work the numbers and you put enough messages out there, you're going to be able to make it work, And I had a course that was telling it, like one of our main modules was like creating content. And I had lots of great content about creating content because I had some partners and stuff that were supplying me with information. And then I have a mindset mentor in our program who called me out on it. She's like, you can't teach people to create content and publish content if you're not doing it yourself. So I was like, okay, all right, let me step into that. And what happened for me was, and this is something that's relevant to what you just said, is when I first started creating it, I did it with the idea and the intent that I was going to create engagement and that there was going to be this instant gratification of like, I'm putting content out and look at all these likes and these comments and these shares and stuff. It's working, right? And it didn't happen. In fact, it was like, it was really quiet for weeks and weeks at a time. But then I got on that first sales call, just like you said, where somebody said, yeah, I saw that video where you were talking about the 3-call sales process where you have like a paid sales call in between a proposal. And I was like, when did this guy watch that? Like he didn't like it. He didn't comment on it. He didn't share it. And then it happened again and again and again. And you cannot measure this stuff. Like, I don't care how much you try to justify the cost or the time investment of content. You don't get the validity until you actually talk to people and go, oh, it works. It works. Trust that it works, right? And it's exactly what you're saying, right? It's like, it's working without you having to be there. And you mentioned this, I think, the last time we talked too, about just the convenience of audio even too, because I've been really heavy on video for lots of reasons, just because it's, the richest form of media, right? You can extract the audio and that type of thing, but I've never done it. But I know you were saying before though, that like audio is so easy to take with you, right? Especially when people are like commuting and that type of thing, because obviously they're not watching a video when they're in their car, possibly in the train and on the bus, but they're more likely to consume that audio. That was something that really stuck out to me last time we talked.
Well, and it's a very intimate experience. So I listened this weekend. My wife had some projects for me around the house. And so I've got, these great little AirPods, and I stuck them in my ears, and I listened to Simon Sinek read his latest book, The Infinite Game. And so it was just me and Simon.
Was this while your wife was talking to you, you're saying?
No.
You were listening to?
Yeah.
Is this a marriage relationship strategy now too?
just in case she watches this, I took down the to-do list and I listened intently, and then I put the AirPods in. So it's just me and Simon Sinek, one-on-one.
Yeah.
He's in my ears.
Yeah.
There are very few closer places he could get to share his message with me.
Yeah.
And so you have that ability, and you're not looking for, this is one of the things that we always have to sort of retrain our clients on. They come in thinking, gosh, I'm going to get the 1 million downloads, or forget million,
right,
the 10,000 downloads a month. They come in with this idea in mind that they're going to get all these downloads. The truth is, and the sort of secret when you talk to people who produce podcasts, is that the audience you create in your podcast is a direct parallel of the audience you already have, likely in your email list or maybe on social media. And so you're not going to like magically, if you don't have a following, you're not magically going to get it through podcasting, but you don't need it. You need the right 20, 50, 100, 200 people to listen to it that are going to do business with you. And most of the people that are listening to us right now, they're probably not looking for 1,000 clients this month, probably not 1,000 this year, maybe not 1,000 this decade.
Yeah. Yeah. They need a handful, right? They need a handful of well-paying clients that are willing to pay them for their expertise to take away some problem, to make something a little quicker, a little faster, a little more profitable. Totally in alignment with you on that one. And I can tell you now that you said that out loud, that was why my last podcast failed, is the thought that I was looking at it as a money generator. I thought that if I could launch a podcast and get enough downloads, that I could get sponsors, and that could be another source of revenue. And that was my ultimate failing point, was that, obviously it's possible I could have created. It's kind of like you said, man, I wish I would have just kept going in 2012, but because who knows, maybe it could have been that, but I had that expectation when I started it, and it didn't happen within like 3 months, and I quit. And I think a lot of people can probably relate to that.
Well, I don't know if you're familiar with Jordan Harbinger.
I know the name. Yeah.
So he's got a new podcast called The Jordan Harbinger Show. He was on a podcast called The Art of Charm for many, many years as one of the hosts of that. And he was in a mastermind group that I was in for a number of years. And he would actively, in fact, he was actively the month before I launched our current podcast, he wrote this big post in the discussion forum for the mastermind group, why I would never recommend starting a podcast. Well, and he was doing it from the perspective of the podcast is the business model.
Right.
And he's just like, it's so hard. A lot of it is luck driven, and, and you don't have a lot of control over the audience that comes to you. Now, he's been very successful, and he's got a pretty good team around him that know how to build that. But to me, there's far too many factors there that are out of your control to base your business around it. And for most of us, we're just looking for clients. And so the thing that you can control is, who do I invite to interview? I can tell you, if you do that strategically, and, we're continually getting better and better at that. In fact, we have our clients now give us a dream list of who do they want to interview. And, we're now getting very good at getting those people to say yes. And then of course, once they say yes to one person, it's funny how they tend to turn up on somebody else's list and they come right back. So you're able to do that really strategically, but you have a lot of control over that process. Then as a conversion tool, you can publish this to all the prospects that you have in your world that are unconverted. Now you've got a way that's in your control to turn those people into clients that you probably weren't communicating with very effectively. Yeah. That's a winning strategy.
Yeah. 100%. I'm sold on it. And, the biggest thing that's always come up for me, and I'm sure other people that are listening, is always just that it's the time conversation, right? Like the idea, it's the time. And then for me, everything to me always comes back to mindset. So for me, it's like, how's this going to be different than the last time I did it? And I talk through this stuff with clients on a daily basis. So I'm very aware of like how limiting that belief is. But so let's discuss exactly like, what do you guys do as a service if somebody was to come to you and say, all right, what you told me makes sense, I'm interested, where do I start? Where do you start with people on this kind of thing?
Well, so the first place we start is with a short conversation just to see if we're a fit. And, we'll spend about 20 or 30 minutes together and just see if we like each other. Because if you don't like me, we're not going to get very far with any of this strategy. From there, we take all of our new clients through a process we call the growth audit. Takes about 90 minutes. There's a small fee involved. If you get done at the end of that and think it was a waste of time, we'll give you the money back. But it gives us a chance to really dive in deep and say, this is either a great strategy for you, or we don't think it's a good strategy for you. And here's what we would recommend. And if it doesn't fit with something we do, we'll refer you out to somebody that we trust. Assuming you go, podcast would be perfect. We can see here the guests that would really be great to invite that could lead you to your future clients. Then we'll lay that strategy out. And then from that point, we take the ball entirely. We're going to train you on how to do interviews. We're going to help you build out your list of strategic guests. If most of our clients, we call it the Target 100 process. We like to have a working list of 100 that we're always working through. Most of our clients can only get to maybe 15 to 30. And that's okay. Sure. We're going to take the profile that we come up with and we're going to go find other potential candidates, bring them back to you and say, what do you think about these people? And you can say yes or no. And then we'll do all the outreach. So we try and make all of that very easy. And then once you get into doing the interviews, you're just showing up for the interview. The minute you hang up, we take care of the rest. I mean, we get it edited, audio edited, we get it on your website, in your social media, in your email marketing, all of that. We also kind of help you with guest relations. So when you book an interview, a box gets sent out to them, physical box in the mail with, a great branded packet that shows up to tell them, here's how to prepare for the interview. Here's how to connect, all of the questions that we know that they have. We want to give those strategic relationships for you the first class experience that they deserve to really set you up to have a strong relationship with them long term. So kind of soup to nuts. And if you're going to do it yourself or with an internal team, that's the experience you want. You just want to show up and talk. Team needs to do the rest.
Yeah, for sure. No, I'm glad to hear that you have that process as like a step one as well, where there's even an investment upfront. I know we do the same thing too. And it's literally just to make sure that both parties show up fully committed to like solve a problem and create a solution together, right? Co-created, because you ultimately need the client to do the work, right? They have to be fully bought into the process and what the potential outcome is, and know that they are the critical component to it working, right? So that's an important piece. And cool. And I know you mentioned to me that you have a resource that you wanted to share with people as well too. I'm not even sure what the link is, but maybe you want to let everybody know and what exactly it is.
Well, you held the book up earlier, and I think it'd be fun to give everybody who's watching or listening a copy of the book. Cool. And so if they go to unstoppableceo.net/expert selling, they can get a copy of the book there. And There's a link there where they can book some time to talk with me if they want to have a chat. And there's also a really great scorecard. If you're not sure where you sort of stand with your marketing overall, there's an assessment, takes about 10 minutes to go through, and it'll show you exactly which part of your marketing system you need to focus on next. And so all those things are available at unstoppableceo.net/expert selling.
Cool. Excellent. Well, I will throw that in the link here on the Facebook Live where this is streaming to right now. And then, of course, I'll send it out when I blast it out to my email list and everybody else in my network as well. And yeah, this has been super helpful, Steve. I'm so glad that we got to chat about this because I know, people bring it up to me all the time, and there's always a lot of directions people can go with content creation and, just coming up with the ideas sometimes and then overcoming the fear of talking about their expertise, like unapologetically just showing up and saying like, I have 30 years experience doing this. It makes people uncomfortable. So being able to do a combination of that while bringing in guests, clients, potential prospects, just other smart people that they believe their network could benefit from, I think it eases some of the stress and the tension that people have around creating content. And that's ultimately what I'm trying to do, and why I wanted to have the conversation with you, is to just empower people to say like, it doesn't need to be that hard. You just got to start. you just got to take a step in that direction. Right. So any final words before we sign off here today?
Well, it's been a lot of fun. You and I could probably go on talking about these things and all the great things you guys do for hours and hours, but I appreciate the opportunity to talk with your audience.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll be talking again soon for sure. I know there's a lot of work that I need to do here, and we'll make sure that we're helping each other going forward as well. One of the other benefits of doing these interviews, right? So Absolutely. Thanks so much, Steve. Appreciate it.
Thanks.